Hello friends, welcome back to Recap Legends. Today I am going to explain a science fiction thriller film named Elizabeth Harvest. The movie starts with a man named Henry, who is a scientist by profession and the richest person in that city. Here we come to know that, in Villa, only 3 people were used to live. One of them is his blind son, Olive, and another one is his maid, Claire, and he himself. In this scene, we see Henry, who has married a girl, who is younger than him. It is seen in the next scene that Henry was showing his villa to his wife. His big house had multiple rooms which were locked, and biometrics was required to enter such rooms. Such a program had been created for this, that all doors will open with the biometric of Henry. They both pass near a room. Elizabeth asks Henry, "What is in this room?" Henry replies, "You are the owner of everything which is in this villa, but you will have to give your words to me, as you will not come near this room, nor you will go inside." Then Elizabeth tells Henry that she cannot go to any room anyway because the door of the whole room opens with your fingerprint. Henry replies on this, "I have also set your biometric with mine in the system. Due to this, you can also enter any room now." The next day, Henry had to leave outside for something. He goes outside that he will return home after a day. Elizabeth talks with the maid that Henry's IQ level is so high and he is a successful man. "Why did he marry with an ordinary girl like me?" Maid says on this, "I have no knowledge about this." One night, Elizabeth was alone at home and she was becoming so curious. "Why should I not enter that forbidden room? And I may check as to what is in that room." She goes back on Henry's words and enters the room. As she entered the room, she finds many boxes. There were red and green lights in some of those boxes. Then Elizabeth opens the box which has a green light and becomes shocked. Actually, as she opens that box, she sees her own clone in that box, and she leaves the room hurriedly, but in order to escape like this, her hands get injured. In the next scene, Henry had returned home, and, seeing Elizabeth frightened, he understands that Elizabeth must have entered that room to check what is there. Henry gets angry seeing Elizabeth's behavior and tells her, "I had disallowed you to enter that room. In spite of this, you went. Why did you do so?" Elizabeth was so afraid of hearing this and starts apologizing to him. But Henry becomes even angrier and tries to kill her. Elizabeth was running as being afraid of him. She wanted to leave the house and runs towards the door in fear, and tries to open the door, but she cannot open any door, because Henry had disabled her fingerprints. Due to this, she is unable to get out of the house and Henry kills Elizabeth and buries her dead body with the help of his son and maid. In the next scene, a detective comes here who used to make the visits here before. And he always used to ask about Henry's wife on his arrival. Detective says, "You always reply the same whenever I visit here, that your wife is sleeping." Then Henry says, "The girls of nowadays spend their most time in sleeping." Hearing all, the detective goes from there. After this, the scene shifts to 6 weeks later, where it is shown that Henry has married Elizabeth again, and he has brought her home. And here the whole scene is replayed, the scene that was shown at the time of the first Elizabeth. And here Henry forbids him to enter a specific room. The new Elizabeth goes through the same experiences, also discovering the room with the clones, except she manages to kill Henry before he can kill her. She herself faints after Henry dies and after a while when she restores her senses, she begins to unlock all the doors while using Henry's fingerprints, but no door is unlocked. She hides the dead body of Henry there. After a time, Oliver and Claire return back to home, and they found that Henry was dead. Seeing this, Claire has a heart attack and is taken to the hospital. After this, new Elizabeth observes the unlocked door of the house and thinks to move outside. Meanwhile, Henry's son threatens her, "If you step out of this house, police will arrest you because you have murdered Henry. If you want this, the police may not arrest you, then burn the corpse of Henry." After this, it is seen that Elizabeth burns the corpse of Henry with the help of Olive. Then Elizabeth asks Olive, "Who am I?" Then he tells that Henry created the clone of 6 Elizabeth like you. Henry was a genetic scientist. He also tells you are 5th Elizabeth and out of 6 Elizabeth, 4 Elizabeth had died before. Before Olive can tell Elizabeth anything else, the detective arrives and begins to inquire about Henry, but Olive shoots at the same time, killing the detective on the spot. After the detective is killed, Oliver imprisons Elizabeth in a room and asks her to read Claire's journal to him, and he tells her that he will not release her until she does. The journal reveals that the real Elizabeth was Henry's wife, but she died of a rare medical condition. Unable to bear her loss, Henry decided to create clones of Elizabeth and hired Claire, a biologist, to help him to perfect the clones. The initial attempts were abortive, but eventually, they succeeded. From the journal, it is learned that Henry and Claire have awoken 6 clones in total, including the current Elizabeth, who is the 5th Elizabeth. Before Elizabeth can read the journal in its entirety, Oliver comes and sees Oliver. Elizabeth attacks Oliver and ties him up, and asks him for the password of the door. Oliver then tells it to have a wrong password, and Elizabeth assumes the password to be correct and goes to open the door. But when that password doesn't open the door, she gets angry and goes to Oliver again. But not finding Olive there, she understands that Olive must have gone to the basement where his clone was kept. So, she holds a knife in her hand, and she goes to the basement where Oliver was standing near the 6th clone of Elizabeth. Seeing Oliver near the clone, Elizabeth asks him, "What are you doing here?" Oliver then tells him that, "I am trying to revive this clone and I need your help in this task." Upon hearing her, as Elizabeth approaches her clone, Oliver sedates her by giving her a sedation injection, leading her into a room, and tying her with a chain. In the next scene, the same Elizabeth is seen, who is reading Claire's journal, where the journal also reveals Claire's suspicions that Oliver is actually a clone of Henry. When Elizabeth tells Oliver this, he states that Henry blinded him out of jealousy as a child, not liking Oliver's growing friendship with one of the child clones. Meanwhile, Elizabeth again attacks Oliver, falls him down and asks for the correct password of the house's doors. At this time, Oliver tells the correct code of the house's doors. Before Elizabeth opens that door, the 6th clone of Elizabeth comes there, who had been awakened by Oliver. Now 5th Elizabeth, who knows the whole reality, told the whole reality to 6th Elizabeth. And as 6th Elizabeth is about to shoot 5th Elizabeth, 5th Elizabeth puts Oliver in front of 6th Elizabeth, causing the bullet to cross Oliver's body and hit 5th Elizabeth as well. Oliver dies there, but Elizabeth is injured. After which 5th Elizabeth is about to open the door and run away, 6th Elizabeth shoots at her again, causing her to fall on the same, but before she dies she tells the clone to read Claire's journal. The new and final Elizabeth reads the journal, which tells how Henry and Claire initially met and details their work together on the cloning experiments. They had a brief intimate relationship at this time, but later Claire discovered that Henry simply wished to relive his wedding night with each new cloned Elizabeth, prior to murdering them. After this, when Claire returned to his house, after recovering from her heart attack, the latest Elizabeth clone gives her the journal and tells Claire to put her research to better use. Then the new Elizabeth leaves to start life on her own. At this point, the movie ends. Thank you. If you like my explanation, please subscribe and press the bell icon to get the notification of the uploaded video. See you in the next video.